guys have ever seen that. Great movie. If your kids haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. But he was very accomplished, and so I was excited to meet him and talk to him. And he said immediately, "Are you ready to get to work?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "This is real work." I said, "I'm ready for real work." He said, "Okay, we're flying to New York next Monday for 3 months." I said, "Oh, okay." So, and I would get a raise, which was like 15 cents more an hour. And I think I was making maybe $19,000 a year. But it didn't matter. I was really ecstatic and happy. And so I flew to New York. I'd only been in LA for maybe 6 months, and I flew to New York and shot this movie. One of the things that had happened during this time that really affected me and my family, and actually inspired me, eventually inspired me in a positive way, is my sister passed away. She was killed in a plane crash. And that summer I moved to LA. And it was really difficult to kind of even comprehend. And so I remember getting a phone call, and I flew back to Michigan. And my parents drove me back, and it was really tough. I almost didn't know if I wanted to come back, but I did. I said I wanted to do this, and they were great about driving me back. We stayed at this cabin in Denver. It was haunted or something. My brother and I woke up there. We thought we saw a ghost. It was a mess. But it was a really difficult time for me and my family and everybody else. And my sister was a fantastic person. Also Arab American, so which was cool. She was very proud of that as well. But she inspired me for my first comic book. And as I was shooting this movie in New York, I started to do some writing. And I thought, the first thing, I want to write comic books, and I thought, I'm going to write something just to write something and create something. And I wanted to create a character that was based on my sister, that was inspired by my sister because she was so important to us and so special. And so I created a character called Stargirl. I don't know if you guys saw it flash around here, but I created this character called Stargirl, and I thought, oh, well, I'm in New York, and I met some people from DC Comics because they're published there, and I said, well, I'm going to send them this proposal. And they came to the set, and I talked to them, and got to know them, and they were like, oh, they were asking me all these questions about movies, and I was asking them all these questions about comics, and they said, well, you have any ideas? I said, well, I do have one, and I gave them Stargirl, and about a year later, they bought it, and so that was my first sale, is my sister kind of helped get me into comic books in a strange way. She was really, I think she was the key to a lot of things like that. She was really a strong person. And so then I started to write comic books and do movies at the same time. I was working for this director, and I started to write. It was called Stars and Stripe, and it was about this teenage girl. That's a pretty cool cover. You guys may have seen it around. So the character I created was this 16-year-old girl from Beverly Hills, because I got to know Beverly Hills and I didn't like the people there very much. So I thought, well, I'm going to make her a girl from Beverly Hills that doesn't really fit in there, and then her mother remarries and they move to Nebraska. She hates Nebraska, and she finds out her stepfather actually was a sidekick to a superhero when he was younger. And so she steals his old partner's equipment to make him mad and becomes a superhero herself, Stargirl, and they end up teaming up, and it was really about how a step-parent can be just as good as a real parent. And it became a stepdaughter, stepfather superhero team, and it did pretty well. It got canceled after a year, but we lasted a year, and the characters survived into other books. And that was really my first thing I wrote. But as I was starting to write Stars and Stripe, I got offered a book called JSA, which is Justice Society of America, which is characters like Hawkman and the original Green Lantern, and some more superhero stuff, and I really enjoyed that. And so I was writing at night and on the weekends, and then being an assistant during the day. And I did that for quite a while. I worked with Dick Donner. I would ask him about, stories and his perspective on storytelling, and he taught me, as I was writing comics, he kind of helped shape my storytelling. One of the things he always said is, it's all about humans, emotion. That's first before plot, before anything else, before powers. It's all about emotion. And he said, when I did Superman, we had the script and it was this thick. It was terrible. It was very campy. There was a scene in it, he said, where Superman flew down. He's looking for Lex Luthor, and he flew down to the street. And he found a bald guy, and he turned him around, and it was Telly Savalas. And he said, "Who loves you, baby?" And so it was full of campy, weird things. And Dick said, what I did is I took the word verisimilitude, which means truth. And he said he put it up on the doorways of the production office where they were making the movie. And people kept saying, well, what's that mean? And he said, well, I'll tell you what it means. That's why he used that word instead of the truth. He said, it means truth in the essence of what you're doing. So that in Superman, he said, we're not making a goofy, campy movie. He said, we're going to treat this very seriously. But everything's real in this world except for Superman. He's the only thing not real. And that stuck me for a long time, because that emotion is what it's all about. And so although he could fly and he was strong, it was really about the truth of the reality that he was living in. You could still have fun with the characters. And that stuck with me. So I worked on comic books, and I was his assistant for, back and forth for about 4 years. And it was great. I worked on another movie, Lethal Weapon 4, again with the pre-crazy Mel Gibson. And honestly, I don't know what happened to that guy. He was very nice when I knew him. But we shot a movie called Lethal Weapon 4, which was a sequel to the Lethal Weapon series. And we shot in Vegas. We closed down a freeway. We blew up a tanker truck. It was really exciting. It was an exciting time. And again, I would learn about story. And one of the things I always tried to do is I always want to learn about every facet of what I'm working on. And that's something that probably has been instilled in me from my parents, is just wanting to know more and master as much as I can. And so I would just talk about story with him the whole time. And occasionally we'd have interesting nights. There was one night where Joe Pesci was really mouthing off to somebody, and was kind of being very nice. And we were down in Long Beach, and he's walking along the pier, and he stepped off right into the water as he was yelling at somebody. And then he pulled him out. He was pretty nice after that. But anyway, it was a really interesting experience for me working for Richard Donner. I have to say, he's probably, next to my family, he's the most influential person on me, both professionally and personally. When my sister passed away, I barely knew him, and he paid for my plane ticket and my friend's plane ticket to fly home. And he said, your job will be here, don't worry about your job, take as long as you want. And he was always very, very just considerate about everything. If I wasn't going home for Thanksgiving, he'd invite me over. If it was Monday night, he'd say, do you want to stay and watch football? If you got nothing to do? I said, sure. Even if I didn't like the teams playing. It was cool to watch football with Richard Donner. But he was and still is a huge source of inspiration for me. And on a storytelling level, you can see the success he's had over the years in his movies, that he really helped shape what I try and do. So as I was working for Dick, I was starting to write more and more comics. I started to work for Marvel. Marvel called me and offered me something. They said, do you want to write the Avengers? And I said, sure, I'll write the Avengers. So I started to write the Avengers, and I started to write a couple other things for Marvel. And during that time, I got more and more job offers, and so I couldn't do both. I had to either be an assistant to Richard Donner or be a writer. And I wanted to be a writer. My whole goal was always to go to LA and get that union card, that Writers Guild union card, because to me that meant I finally made it. And I called Dick one day and I said, hey, can I come over and talk to you? And he said, sure. So I came over, and he sat at his dining room table, and I sat down. And I said, hey, I need to talk to you about something. And he knew. He said, you're leaving, aren't you? And I said, yeah. And he was so proud and happy and supportive. And he said, I knew this was coming soon. You've been doing all this great stuff. He says, I always want to be a part of your life, so whenever you need anything, just give me a call. And that meant a lot to me. And so I said, I'll be gone in 2 weeks. Is that cool? And he's like, yeah, it's fine. So I had to train the new assistant. I don't know has anyone in here ever been an assistant to anybody? So a couple people. Okay, so you know how difficult a job it can be. You have to know these people inside and out. So I had to train somebody for 2 weeks. 4 years of my life, I had to train someone for 2 weeks. And his name was Derek Hoffman, and he actually turned out to be a great assistant. He's still working for him 10 years later. So he's doing something right, which is great. I take pride in that because I feel like I passed on some good information. But anyway, so at that point, I left Richard Donner's company. I left Warner Brothers. I was working for DC Comics now, and full-time, they'd signed me under an exclusive contract. And I was writing a lot of comics, a lot of books up here that you see, like The Flash and Hawkman and JSA. And so I started to work at home. Have any of you ever worked at home full-time? Okay, it's terrible. It's awful. It's really, really boring, and you get cabin fever extremely quickly. But I had a lot of freedom, so I would get up. I had a routine. Again, I think I had my dad on my shoulder telling me, you got to go to an office, you got to work 9 to 7, or 8, or 9 if you have to. Got to work weekends. And so I quickly realized that I needed structure as a writer. I just needed structure. So I rented out an office with one of my friends, a co-writer named Jeff Loeb, who's actually the head of Marvel Television, really famous writer. And I'd go to work every day like a normal person at 9 o'clock. I'd show up at 9 o'clock. Jeff would show up at 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock. And he'd say, how much writing did you get done? I said, I'm already halfway through a script. How do you do that? He'd just get in his office. I said, you didn't grow up in Michigan. So I would write all day, and then I'd be done at 7 or 8 o'clock at night, and I did that Monday through Friday, and then most Saturdays I would go in there too, and I'd write. And I did that for a long time, and as I was writing, Jeff Loeb he'd always come in my office in the morning, ask me how much I got done, and at the night he'd ask me how much I got done, and I'd ask him, how much you get done? He said, I don't want to talk about it. But one of the things that, again, allows me to be so prolific, like I write 3 books a month, I still have a day job, I write TV stuff here and there. It is a work ethic. It's a little bit manic, but it's there. And that again comes from my upbringing. But I did that for quite a while, and then I started to want to do more than just comic books, because I love comic books, and I see a lot of you people with the comic book t-shirts, love them too. But I felt like I needed to do something more. I was getting a little bit confined by comics, so I started getting to television, and I wrote a script for Smallville, which is a show about Superman. Before he's Superman, I did that for 3 years as I wrote comic books. I wrote some video game stuff. I wrote some film stuff, and there was a point in my life about 2 years ago where I had a lot of success in comic books, and that had translated now into television and video games and film. And I was writing the treatment for the Flash movie. I was writing a Smallville episode. I was writing a DC Comics video game, and I was writing my DC Comics. So all the things I was working on, although they were different media, I was working on DC Comics, and it really comes back to my love of DC Comics and the characters and the passion. Is I just find it very easy to write those characters, those superheroes. And Warner Brothers was creating DC Entertainment. They were taking the DC Comics publishing group, which is a part of Warner Brothers, and they were building DC Entertainment. And the president was a woman by the name of Diane Nelson. So about 3 years ago now, she called me and said, hi, I'm the new head of DC Entertainment. I said, hello. And I said, am I fired? She said, no. She said, you're doing a great job. I'd love to meet you. And so we met and we talked, and she said, you're doing all this different DC Comics stuff. How would you like to come work for the company full time, have a 9 to 6 job, and be a consultant on all the DC projects, from movies to television to video games? I said, do I still get to write my comics? She said, sure. So eventually I said yes, and I started doing that. It was very much a shock to the system. I talked to my dad a lot about it. Going from a job where I can kind of stroll in shorts at 9 o'clock and have no one tell me when I have to be there and when I have to leave, to being in a corporate office at Warner Brothers. And it was really, I think the first couple months was really interesting, because I was in all these meetings about business and structure, and I didn't know what when they were like, we're in the red, I'm like, well then don't we have to be in the green? They're like, no, it's called the black. I said, why is it called the black? That doesn't make any sense. It should be called the green. Right? Isn't the black break even and the green's problem? But so I had to learn all these super basic, beyond basic. I think I took one economy class at Michigan State. Great school, but I didn't learn a lot about business there. And so I had to learn all these things, like what's the difference between margin and revenue, and all this, and brand management, all these things I never wanted to learn. And that's a TV show that we've got coming up. And so anyway, I started to get into this job. And so what I do there is I oversee all the media stuff. So if you guys have played Batman Arkham City, like any Batman video games, or Batman Brave and the Bold, or see the Green Lantern animated series, or anything like that, I work on that stuff. And I work with all the Warner Brothers divisions. They're very talented people, a lot of great creators there. And I worked on the Green Lantern movie, that was a lot of fun, and worked on this new show, Arrow, that's coming out. Speak of the devil. And I've been writing Green Lantern. The reason I actually had success in Green Lantern, and this kind of comes full circle to why I'm here, is Green Lantern was a character that's pretty popular back in the day, but for all you guys who don't know who Green Lantern is, the mythology of Green Lantern is an intergalactic police force made up of beings that are chosen from all sorts of planets, including Earth. A lot of humans have been chosen and inducted to the core, and they fight for the good of the universe. And the concept had kind of gotten away from that, and in 2004, DC Comics asked me to kind of bring Green Lantern and Hal Jordan back and see what I could do with it. And so I launched this book, Green Lantern Rebirth, in 2004, and it became one of the best-selling DC Comics. And Green Lantern suddenly went from 1 title to 4 titles, and it was just a massive rebirth, which is what the book was called, ironically. And so I've been writing that book for 8 years now, and Green Lantern is a labor of love. It's still one of the top-selling books. It outsells almost every Marvel book still, and it's a big wow. Outsells, which I'm really, really proud of. And so last year, DC Comics, we decided to relaunch all our titles and start over. Oh yeah, Robot Chicken. If you guys have ever heard of Robot Chicken, we did a DC Comics special on it too. My grandma, you won't get that. Don't watch it. So anyway, so with Green Lantern, I started to think, well, I've been writing Green Lantern for a long time. I wanted to do something new. I knew I was going to introduce a brand new character. I wanted to introduce a brand new Earthman who had the ring, who had